Welcome back to Screen Diaries. Today I'm going to be doing a recap and breakdown on Severance Season 2, Episode 2, as well as again sharing some theories and more. The theme of Episode 1 was the POV from the Ennies after the OTC incident. We see early on that Episode 2 is the POV of the Outies, which is super exciting. The episode opens where we jump back to the aftermath of the night their Ennies were on the outside. You see the moment right after Mark S turns back into Outie Mark. So they cut to Helly where she's in the bathroom at the event. We're introduced to what looks like the family bodyguard, Mr. Drummond. Her father comes in and he has this odd look on his face like he knows something. He gets super close to her with a deep stare and says, "Fed it, mop it." Now, if you're not familiar, fed it means horrific stench and mop it is a young child. So basically he called her a stinky child. But really connecting this to the show, I believe he's saying Helly R has essentially rotted or tainted his daughter, Helena. And something really cool that I noticed is the scene before this with Mark S at his sister's house. You hear his brother-in-law Rickon complain about the smell of the poopy diaper. What a transition. Or could this saying be some kind of code word that Helena and her father have to confirm if it's Helly or Helena? Also, I don't think this is the father speaking. I think it's another Egan from generations past speaking through her father, because the look after he said it was a shock, as if he couldn't believe he said it. His vocabulary sounds like there may be from old memories of past Egans. Is this hinting that somehow previous Egans' memories or consciousness are being transferred to younger Egans? That's what I think, but we'll see. We cut to Dylan holding an ice pack on his head, leaving the building as Helena and Milchick are watching. Here, Helena tells Milchick to go see the employees and find out every word they said and who they said it to. This is where Milchick says, "So should I fire them?" To which Helly responds, "Let care guide your hand." There's this really cool walking transition, and Helena then enters a room where she's met with Miss Covell. She thanks her for acting so quickly and said she saved her from disaster and that she owes her a debt of gratitude and that she proved her loyalty. She asks her back to Lumen, where Miss Covell responds, "Well, an apology is warranted." Helena apologizes on behalf of her father, and the board, and admits they did treat her poorly. Miss Covell gets right into damage control and talks about what she's going to do to help and what she's going to implement. Helena stops her right in her tracks and offers her a promotion to be on the Severance Advisory Council, a brand new initiative where she would be spearheading it. Her response is, "No, I should be running the Sever floor," so that's where she wants to be. And Helena is like, "No, Milchick already has that covered." And with complete cockiness, Covell says, "You don't value me, you fear me." Helena says, "We fear no one. What are you talking about?" The conversation ends with Covell saying, "She'll think on it." While this combo is taking place, we cut to Milchick on his motorcycle. So we find out here something small about Milchick on the outside. I wanted to note that compared to how the employees' cars normally have like that retro look, his looks more modern. So that's very interesting. We see Helena making a video apologizing about her actions at the event and says she mixed alcohol with a non-lumen medication, which caused her to have the outburst. I think this is going to become relevant at some part of the season, with Lumen maybe playing or dabbling in a part in the pharmaceutical business. All these small seeds are being planted and I'm loving this. Did you also notice in the apology video, Helena says the Ennies are human and just like them? But if you remember in season 1, in the denial video from Helena to Helly, when Helly requested to leave Lumen, Helena clearly tells her, "You are not human." So a very contradicting moment here. Next, Milchick shows up at Irving's house and fires him in a pretty gentle way. He shows up to Dylan's house and tells him he was involved in an altercation that evening and was the aggressor, and fires him. Now this was a totally different tone from Irving's firing, and I think that has to do with Milchick and Dylan's not so good relationship at Lumen, and Dylan just blowing everything up. And just like I thought, we get our opening credit visual and music back. It's different this time, but it's back. It's creepier and I'm liking it. And I think it symbolizes how crazy this season is about to get. We cut to Outie Mark still at Devin's house and they're telling him about the "she's alive" moment, and Rickon is like, "Oh no, I think you were just talking about the baby after we found her." And Mark agrees to this. this. He's like, yeah, I definitely was talking about the baby. But Devin doesn't seem on board with this. And it was interesting. Ricky actually said something that made sense. He mentioned Mark's Eddie made it a point to alert them of the abuses he was facing. So he seems pretty aware. Seems like he's helping. But I'm going to be keeping my eye on Rickon because he seems too okay with all of this. And I just don't know. Milchick shows up and explains to Mark his Eddie was at his sister's that night. You can see Devin, Sister Bear, just staring Milchick down. And I love these moments where we see how much she has her brother's back. Milchick explains the OTC protocol. Miss Cobell was brought up, and Milchick says Mark will never have to worry about her again. Outside of Lumen and in Lumen, she'll never touch the severed floor again. I definitely think she will touch the severed floor again. So all of this confirms Milchick was indeed lying when he told Eddie Mark in episode 1 that his team didn't want to come back. He fired them. So there's that. Mark goes home and immediately goes to Miss Cobell's house to confront her, but she doesn't answer the door. We cut to Helena watching the tape where her and Mark had their last conversation and kissed, and she keeps rewinding it. It seems like she may be longing for this kind of life Helly R has, as she even smiles while watching. Seems like she doesn't have a love life, so it's like she's watching herself in this romance like a movie and wants to be a part of it. We get a really nice close-up of her eye, and I feel like it's very telling and shows the amazing attention to detail in the show. Dylan is out, looking for a new job. He makes it to a job interview. They have this funny back and forth dialogue where he pretends to have a love for doors. The man's asking him, when did you know you love doors? And he's like, when I was 5. And he's like, what finish is your favorite? And Dylan's like, semi-gloss. So it's a really funny moment that they added. But once he finds out that he was severed, he abruptly ends the interview. So you see the theme of discrimination is woven into the scene. Mark meets up with his sister for coffee and they discuss the evening again, and she brings up the she's alive moment again with Gemma. Mark tells his sister it's not possible because he ID'd her body. He also tells her that he's going to be quitting that evening. He's very irritated by her, kind of going off on her a little bit, and he storms out. As he storms out, you see Helena's bodyguard, Mr. Drummond, watching them with the word frolic written on his hand, which is one of the 4 tempers by Kier Egan. We know frolic means cheerful, playful, but you clearly see the contrast of that with his character. He seems quite the opposite. Now that his character is introduced, I'm interested to see his character development and how important he really is to Helena and her family. We cut to Herb talking to someone on the payphone outside of his house saying, you're not picking up, I get it, but I want you to know my Annie got the message. And then who do we see watching him from a car? Bert. We see Bert watching him from a car. So this is an interesting change of events. How did Bert know where to find him? Did he follow Irv after the whole incident at his house? This shows us Irv knows more than what he's leading off, and Bert does too. Milchick shows up at Mark's house with a pineapple, as you know from the pineapple bobbing scene in season 1, to convince him to stay. He offers him a 20% pay raise, an investigation into his Annie's claims, and he brings up Gemma again and asks if he still feels the same pain he did when he first took the job. Also tells him he's found love too. So that of course is going to make him curious. You can see here just how manipulative Milchick is. Mark returns to work and is also confirmed here it hasn't been 5 months. It's been a couple days. Upon his arrival, Helena and Milchick are watching him through the window. They're having a discussion with Natalie and Mr. Drummond about who they're bringing into MDR as replacements. It's confirmed Dario is the floater from overseas, and the pair laid off from the 5X is Mark W. and Gwendolyn. Milchick also says in the scene it's been 48 hours since the OTC incident. So that confirms it right there too. Milchick worries about the chemistry between the replacements and Mark, but Helena is not worried about that. She said, we need Mark to return to work long enough to complete the Cold Harbor. That's all I'm worried about. So this shows why the board gives him his team back, because they want something from him. So you see Milchick going right back to Irvin Dillon's house asking them to come back. Mark S returns to work, and outside of the building, Mark W is arguing with security guards after being let go after only working 3 days, he says. So, which is another confirmation that this was not 5 months. It was a lie. This brings us back to the moment in episode 1 where the team is reunited and the team starts staggering in. First Mark, then Dylan, then Irv, and finally Helly. But I wanted to point out here that in the elevator and the stagger scene, when everyone else stepped onto the elevators and the door closed, you heard a clear ding. But you didn't hear this when Helly stepped onto the elevators. To me, this kind of confirmed my theory from episode 1 that this is Helena. I think them showing her watching the tapes from Lumen like a television television show, we can imply she wants to be a part of it and see how it feels. I think with the lackluster life she lives, she wants to feel something, and this is the way that she can. We're approaching the final moments of the episode, and Mark goes home and finally catches Miss Cobell as she's leaving and tells her he trusted her, let her into his house, even ate her disgusting cookies. She makes a joke and says, oh, was it the pineapples that pulled you back in with them? Which would be hypocritical if she decides to stay herself. She tries to pull off, and he jumps in front of the car and asks if she knows something about Gemma. She pauses, screams, and pulls off. This reaction takes me back to the irritation in season 1 when she was watching the wellness session tapes between Mark and Gemma. So she definitely knows what happened to Gemma, and I think she played a huge role in what happened to her too. A few questions I'm left with is, what is Mr. Drummond's true role? We're seeing more character development with Devin, which I'm happy about, so I'm looking forward to seeing more of her this season. Does Cobell take the role? I think if she does, she's definitely going to be plotting to make it back to the severed floor. I think that's going to be her mission. I really enjoyed this episode. I think the cast is doing amazing, playing in these dual roles, especially the switch between Helly and Helena, the subtle facial expression differences and body movements. Amazing. I'm loving the pacing and how we reversed and got the Outies perspective in episode 2 while we got the Innies perspective in episode 1. So that was episode 2. Let me know down below what you thought of episode 2 and your thoughts on season 2 so far. Thanks for watching Screen Diaries. My name is Kamara, and I'll see you next week for a recap of episode 3. Bye!